Brian Burke joining us here on Tim and Sid. Sid and I were talking about the Ryan Hartman hit on Elias Pettersson. Have you seen it, one? And two, if you've seen it, why can most people watching that game understand that that probably should be more than 2 minutes, and yet we see repeatedly the call on the ice be as little as possible, and then supplemental discipline comes in and says maybe it should have been more?
Well, there was. I thought the hit in the Winnipeg game, the Calgary Winnipeg game, by Sam Bennett.
Yeah, on Perreault.
Perreault. I thought that was much more violent. This was I didn't like this hit, and it should have been a 5. I don't know if there's supplementary discipline there because there's not much force to it. It's not. It didn't trouble me as much as the Perreault hit because Sam really drilled the other Perreault. Yeah. So to me, Matthew Perreault. Sorry. Mm-hmm. This one had less force in it, but still, it's got to be a penalty. It should have been 5, and out of the game. And I think the reason I don't like the officiating I've seen so far in the playoffs. I think most of the calls are good, like they always are, but there's some ticky-tacky ones that I don't like, and I think it's because they're using so many officials. I think in a typical playoff year with 16 teams, they need only so many officials, referees, and linesmen to work the games. I think here they probably need more.
Good point.
Burke, does Hartman get supplemental for that, do you think?
It's not forceful to me. Like the risk of injury wasn't that great. I'll have to watch it again. I mean, you guys could disagree if you like, but to me, he shouldn't have hit him. He's in a vulnerable position, but it's not. He almost lets up for me. I didn't see the violence in it that would really enrage me.
You know what bugs me, Berkey, and this is, I've never had a good enough explanation on this. At some point, the NHL said, all right, you're responsible for your stick. If it gets up in a guy's face, it's a penalty no matter what you were attempting to do. And if you cut that guy, you're going to get 4 minutes. We haven't done the same with hits from behind that are just as, if not way more dangerous than a stick to the face.
Well, I think you can't quantify it like that. The test isn't blood. The test is actually injury. So you can draw a 4 without bleeding. If you have a bad black eye or a welt or a bruise, you can draw a 4 without blood. But it has to be inflict injury. I don't think it translates over into judgment calls on hits. And there is an exception to the high stick rule. It's if you're in a follow through of a shot or a pass, you're allowed to make contact with the player's face because it's clearly unintentional then.
Right.
But I think you're right. There was a strict liability standard on the stick. Hey, you hit a guy in the face, you're getting a penalty. The question is 2 or 4. It's pretty hard to say if you do a hit from behind, you're getting 2 or 4 because a lot of, like you see the hit on Tyler Ennis.
Yeah.
Like he turns back into that hit. I don't know what the kid was supposed to do. I don't think Kirby Duck can do there.
Yeah.
He's got him lined up. It's a clean hit. The guy turns his numbers to him. He's trying to avoid it, but like that was bound to turn into a hit from behind. And we have said over the years, when a player creates the danger himself at the last minute, then that's a free hit. And now the hittee is responsible there. The hitter still has some responsibility. If he can let up, he has to. But like that hit last night, Doc is committed to that hit. The player turns his back at the last minute. What does he think's going to happen next?
Yeah, I get that. He was trying to spin off of it. Yeah, for those who didn't see it. Yeah.
Brian Burke here on Tim and Sid. Leafs in Columbus tonight, Game 3, series tied at 1 on Sportsnet, and you can listen to it on radio and 680 News in the Toronto area. The do you dress 7 defensemen or not conversation, Burke's been going on for basically 24 hours. If you're Sheldon Keefe, would you?
This all depends on the next man up, okay? So it depends on your confidence level. If you believe Sandin goes in and Marincin goes in and you know the roles they're going to be put in, if you believe that gives you enough, then I would want to keep 4 lines and roll 4 lines, have the ability to play them all. Although he didn't play the 4th line very much the first game and not enough for me the second game. I think, they're going to see Columbus is going to roll 4 tonight. So I think the ability to roll 4 has value, but it depends on the next man up. And so if they don't have confidence that Marincin can kill penalties and take some of the minutes that Jake would have taken, then they'll probably dress 7. So they dress an offensive element in Sandin and a defensive element in Marincin. But if they think that one of those guys is ready to do the full menu of work that a Jake would do, I think they'll go with 6D and 12 forwards. And I will tell you this. I've heard some negative reaction on this, people saying, oh, he's not as good. The Toronto fans should shut up. Winnipeg's missing way more important players. On this team, like, understand, on a really good team, like on one of the Stanley Cup teams that Jake was on, he's an ideal 3 or 4 defenseman, number 3 or number 4. On this team, he's a 2. Their defense isn't as good as contending deep teams are. So he's a 2. This is a major blow to the Leafs. They are going to be called upon here to demonstrate character and resolve, because this is a big blow to their group. And he's a leader, too.
Agreed. Brian Burke, NHL on Sportsnet, Hockey Night in Canada, an NHL insider. And I think that forces some of the big Leaf names to have to step up. And maybe it's to score a couple more goals against a team that doesn't give them up all that easy. And I think that most folks can realize that a guy can have a tough game or two no matter how good they are. But do you expect more from Mitch Marner given the responsibilities and the paycheck that he gets from this team?
Yeah, I think at some point, and I remember Austin Matthews' first playoff year here, people were critical, and I said, I'm not hanging it on an 18-year-old kid or a 19-year-old kid. At some point, this group has to have postseason success. I think it's this year. I think it's essential that they win this round, get in, and make some noise. And Mitch is very highly compensated. He's a great kid. He's a wonderful player. His first game, I didn't hear his name in the broadcast once, and I was in the studio. I didn't hear them call his name once. So I was, like, okay, got to be better. He was better for sure in game 2. Now I think the test is, can he maintain that and continue to build on it? Yes, I think he can do more than he did in game 2, but game 2 was a great improvement on game 1. Game 1, he sucked.
Brian Burke joining Tim Sid. Oh, sorry, Timmy, go on. Go jump in.
I wanted to follow up with this. Heavy Hockey has won the last 2 cups, and I know you enjoy a little truculence. Do you think the difference between the way the game is officiated in the regular season and it's officiated in the playoffs hurts some of the smaller players in the league? And I'm not just thinking about Marner, also a guy you know pretty well, Johnny Gaudreau in Calgary, feels like the heat is turned up on him to do what he does in the regular season, in the postseason as well. Do you think the way the game is officiated can make a difference on how effective some of those little guys are?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I do think they turned down, they raised the bar of what's needed to get a penalty in the playoffs. I think they always have, and even though the league tells them not to, they always have and they always do, and in my opinion, they always should. Like I do, I am very annoyed at the officiating over the first 3-4 games of these series. I think there's way too many cheap calls. I think the players responded they came out and opened up with a lot of truculence and a lot of hitting and a lot of bitter activity and fights, and fantastic. Okay, we're in the playoffs. That's supposed to happen. The temperature's supposed to go up. And so usually the officials say, okay, everything's going up, so's the bar for what constitutes a penalty. And that could hurt a Johnny Gaudreau or a smaller player. That being said, I hope that they always do it. And I don't see it right now. I see them missing big hits, like the hit on Matthew Perreault. They've missed a couple big hits, and they're calling the violent hits properly for the most part, but they're calling too much marginal crap.
Ticky-tack.
Ticky-tacky.
And Brian Burke does not like the ticky-tacky. Brian Burke joining us here on Tim and Sid. Burke, tomorrow's schedule, it's one of the best hockey schedules I've ever seen. There's 6 games on the schedule. They all mean everything. Berkey, I want to talk Penguins and Oilers together. I want to give you 3 options here. Penguins, Oilers. Do they both find a way to advance? Does one of them advance, or does neither advance out of this round based on their current situation?
Ooh. I mean, it's been such a pendulum swing in both series. Game 1, I would say Pittsburgh looked really demoralized last night. Late in the third and at the end of the game. They look really demoralized. They look like, man, we didn't see this coming. whereas Edmonton, I think, was right in it right till the end and trying to tie it and get the goalie out. So I would say Pittsburgh, but I also respect their coach so much. Sully, I just think he'll find a way to get them back in the game, and it's really stupid to bet against Sid Crosby very often. So I'm not going to count either one out yet, but if I had to pick one that's in more trouble, I'd say Pitt.
Brian Burke joining us here in terms of last one from me. And I like asking this of the guys who spent a lot of time in the game, sometimes tossing stones at the media from the outside, because there are guys out there and there are women out there who have to find a story each and every day, and then they make stories out of nothing, and then they gravitate to stories that you think mean nothing, or maybe even I think that mean nothing because I'm in the business. But what's the one story or one thing that you're not hearing enough about in the restart? Like, what's the one? Like, I know you're sitting with some pretty talented guys, but there's a lot of chatter from news media, online media, outside of your broadcast. What's the one thing that you're not hearing enough about in this restart?
Well, I don't do social media. I have a Twitter account, but my oldest daughter does it for me.
Right.
I have no idea how to even get on Twitter. Now, she tweets or posts or whatever you do, Twitters or farts or whatever it is.
I think it's tweets, but whatever.
She does that for me. It's what I tell her to do.
Right.
So it's not a phantom account. I text her. I say, Katie, can you tweet about this? But I don't know. I can't go on Twitter, and I don't want to go on Twitter. So I don't know what's being talked about and should be talked about more. I mean, the stories. Okay. I will tell you just one quick thing. Steve Meyer is the NHL senior vice president, is in charge of the return to play. Has done a magnificent job, and I don't think enough is being said about that. There's one mention of it in each periodical, and then they move on to the next thing. The shrouding of the seats and the music and the fan boxes, and it's been done to perfection. So I'd say that. Second, I think the officials are getting most of it right, but not enough. They've got to dismiss. When I ran the referees, I used to say to them, you watch for penalties. You do not look for penalties. There's a huge difference. You see a foul that needs to be called, call it. Arm goes up. It's a foul. But you don't look for it and say, maybe I can make that into a penalty. So to me, that's one criticism. I'd like more talked about that. I would like to see, and this is really I told you guys what ugly shoes are, right? You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is an ugly shoes comment, but I wish the league would get next year's schedule out. Like I wish the teams had something to sell for next year. Now, with all the stuff they've had to do, they get a freebie on this one. They get a pass on this one. That's an ugly shoes comment. But that's what I wish.
Burke, for the record, if you want to call tweets farts, you can, considering all the crap that is on social media nowadays. So it is rather appropriate. And just a quote for the room that I just saw here from Evgeny Malkin in his media availability that I think is interesting, considering where we're kind of at in these series. Malkin just said, quote, "I'm not happy with my game. Huge game for me tomorrow for sure. All three guys, me, Tanger, and Sid, need to take a huge step forward and have everyone follow us." End quote. If you're Mike Sullivan, that's what you kind of want to hear, right?
Yeah, now it's like Mark Messier guarantee the win in game 6 or whatever it was, game 5. Now you got to deliver on it. And I like Gino. I bet she does. I bet she has a big game.
It's going to be amazing tomorrow. Burke, we love you. Thanks, man.
Thanks, man. See ya.